Welcome, everyone, to Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wiggins. So glad to have you on board. Thank you for joining us. If you're part of the live stream tonight, I appreciate you spending some time with me on Train Tuesday. If you're catching us after the live, if you're catching us on YouTube, do us a favor. If you like the content that we deliver on a weekly basis, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you're notified a new video has dropped into our channel, and do comment. We try to answer as many comments as possible, and we do enjoy the interaction. Well, let's see who's joining me tonight. I see Mr. Brian Wilkinson has joined us. Kyle Stevens, DG Model Works, is in the house. We have Union Pacific 8515 Productions is here. Bruce, Greg, Jason, Randall, BN Green 1970, and Brody, just to name a few. Thank you for joining me tonight on Train Tuesday. I don't know about where you're at, but it's definitely feels like winter out here. We've gotten quite a bit of snow here in both the Northeast as well as East Central Illinois. And by the looks of it, I'd say model railroad season is in full swing. This is one of my favorite times of year because I don't have to feel guilty about doing yard work. I can keep the yard work to 1/87th scale or N scale and just work on actual yard work. So let me know in the comments if you're working on your layouts. Even though right now is kind of a busy time with the holidays, maybe you're sneaking in some time to get some work done. Let's see who else is joining us on the live feed. I see Ronald, Tim, and Brian. Charles Woods is here. Good to see you, Charles. Rodney has joined us, and quite a few more that I've probably missed. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We got about 95 people on the live feed right now, so thank you once again for joining us. Now we're going to be talking about SD70 ACUs, and this is a really cool locomotive. Now, this has been a highly anticipated model ever since we announced it back in November of 2023, and 6644 was probably the most anticipated out of the group. These just started shipping. Now, I had been telling folks that we were hopefully going to see them at TrainFest, and we got disappointed. They were delayed. Then I was thinking, you know what, I'm going to play it safe and say these are probably coming later in December. And much to my surprise, one day I got an email, and I was notified that they are shipping in the next few days. And we hadn't even gotten all of our photography done on these models yet. And here we are. They are shipping. So if you pre-ordered them, you've probably already had some time to enjoy your locomotives and have them flex their muscles on your layout. But if not, if you didn't pre-order one of these, I highly suggest after this program that you get in touch with your favorite dealer because they were sold out before they hit our distribution center. So like I was saying, we have really trimmed down our pre-orders just for those who have actually pre-ordered. We used to bring in a little bit more than that for stock, but we stopped doing that about a year ago. So in the future, if you missed out on these, your best bet is to pre-order. Most hobby shops don't charge for that service. You can just pre-order through a hobby shop of your choice and just know that when the time comes, you're going to get an email or a phone call from your dealer letting you know that these models are in and you're going to be ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started with this Train Tuesday. So like I was saying, these were announced back in November of 2023. Now, if you know anything about the SD70 ACU, you know that it's kind of a neat locomotive. If you're someone like me that also enjoys cars, you've heard the term retro mod before. Now, retro mod is when someone will take an existing or an older platform and update it with modern technology, whether it be an engine, a prime mover, electronics, safety equipment, things of that nature. We've all seen that in the car world. Well, railroads are no different. Now, a few years back, Norfolk Southern had purchased some former Union Pacific SD90 Mac, and these were the 9043 Macs. So these were some of the first ones that Union Pacific had ordered. Now, they went to Progress Rail, and they came up with a rebuild system for these locomotives. Essentially what they did was they gutted out all the electronics. They replaced the electronics with Siemens electronics, also some components from Mitsubishi. They also updated the cab by using an EMD Phase 2 cab to comply with most of the safety standards that are now applicable. Now, the SD70 ACE cab is very similar to this. You can see the similarities on the SD70 ACUs. Meanwhile, later on, Canadian Pacific got wind of this. They were really impressed with the program. So Canadian Pacific said, you know what, we've got some of these that have been in the deadline since 2010. They had some SD90s they had ordered from EMD back in the 90s. And rather than just let them sit there in the deadline, they went ahead and did the same thing, although Progress Rail did all of the modifications. So like the Norfolk Southern locomotives, they went ahead and rebuilt these into the AC70 ACUs. However, Canadian Pacific didn't stop there. They went ahead and did some special liveries and paint schemes on their locomotives. Of course, they did the throwback paint scheme. And of course, they did the military tribute. And we're going to be talking a lot about the military tribute locomotives here tonight. Now, the first one that I've got here is the 5-pack. We had previously announced the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force units previously in previous runs. However, for this last and 5th installment, we wanted to go ahead and reintroduce all of those locomotives in case maybe you had missed them the first time they had been out there. Also, too, we had updated the tooling just a little bit on these from the previous runs. These now have animated rotating bearing caps on all of their trucks. So there's the 5-pack. Again, we announced that back in November of 23. And there they are in all their glory. Again, we had offered the previous 4, the 2 versions of the Army, the naval version, as well as the Air Force version. The 6644 we had not offered until just recently, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about these. Now, since these are Canadian Pacific, this is how they would appear in 2019. They have a center-mounted nose door lock. You'll notice these do not have blue flag brackets on them. And of course, these are the special tribute paint schemes. Now, before I go forward, I see there are some comments out there and possibly some questions I want to keep in mind. I will try to answer as many of those questions after the presentation, but until then, just kind of hold tight on that and enjoy the show. We won't go too long for you. So coming up first is 6644. Now, personally, growing up in New England, my favorite model of airplane as far as fighter planes from World War II was the Spitfire. The Spitfire was my favorite and still is my favorite airplane. I think it's probably mixed with my roots as well as the area, but the Spitfire was just an elegant model. And when it came time for the Canadian Pacific crew to do a fitting memorial for the veterans of both on the Canadian side as well as the American side, they chose the Spitfire. Now, keep in mind that the Spitfire was a British origin designed aircraft. It was used by the Canadian Royal Air Force as well as the United States Army Air Corps. Remember, they were not called the Air Force until 1947. So it was fitting that they used the Spitfire. Now, the other cool thing is they actually went ahead and they painted this locomotive the same exact colors that Spitfires were painted at the time of the Normandy D-Day invasion. Now, speaking of invasion, you can see that this locomotive actually has the invasion stripes painted just aft of the Canadian Pacific logo. Going back to World War II, the Allies going in on the Normandy invasion realized that at the time, friendly fire, meaning our own troops were shooting at our own aircraft, was pretty possible. It was actually pretty common in the day. So to differentiate from the Axis powers aircraft, all of the Allied aircraft, the British, the American, the Canadian, they were painted with invasion stripes like you see on the locomotive here. Now, typically the invasion stripes were painted to the upper and lower parts of the innermost parts of the wings, as well as wrapped around the fuselages just aft of the cockpit. Variations did happen, but for the most part, that is how it looked. And those invasion stripes basically let the Allies know that those were their aircraft, not to fire at them. This was a really well thought out paint scheme, and I was really happy to see that they chose this this paint scheme because it's really fitting, and they did a great job on this. So the camouflage colors are derived exactly from the RAF colors, And of course, the D-Day evasion stripes are used by both the American forces as well as the Royal Canadian and the Royal Air Force. So that model is now available. We just started shipping it. Let's talk a little bit about the other ones, especially if you bought the 5 locomotive set. You're going to have all of these in there. 7020, it wears the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO as it's called. The next time you see, maybe at your National Guard area, you might see a Humvee or some type of military equipment. It's usually painted this color. It's a NATO green. It's used by all allies that are in the NATO forces. And Canada uses this on their vehicles as well. They chose 7020 to be painted in this paint scheme. This is typically applied to vehicles that are used in, what they call temperate areas, places where there's forests and things of that nature. Now, on the other hand, we're still sticking with Army. 7021 wears the sand. Now, if you're as old as I am, you probably remember years ago, Desert Storm. That was the first time we really started to see vehicles, both on the British, Canadian, American side, being painted this sand color. It really does have its roots way back to World War II, but this modern version is a little bit different than the World War II version color of sand. This sand here was applied to 2021, again, to represent Army fighting vehicles for those that are used in an arid climate. I actually saw some comments on this a while ago, and people may be a little bit confused if you don't know the background. This is 7022, and it is painted up to mimic a modern day naval vessel. Both the United States and Canada have Navy vessels that are painted in this paint scheme. You've got that red hull color on your fuel tank and your trucks. Then that black line that you see, in naval terms, that's called bootstrapping. It's a bootstrapping stripe that you'd see just below the water line on the hull. And then, of course, the top is a navy gray color. Even the way that they did the numbering, you'll see the numbering is a little bit different. On the Army versions, they had the cab numbers right on the cab, whereas this one, they've got a much bigger, bolder 7022, and it's painted out just like a ship would have in a naval type font. And here's a really cool one. This one is basically for the modern Air Force. Now, both the United States and Canada, Canada right now uses a lot of FA-18s. They will, in the future, use the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. When they receive their Joint Strike Fighters in the latter part of 2026, they will be painted in this paint scheme, which is a dark gull gray on the upper surfaces and a light gull gray on the bottom surfaces. The cool thing about military colors is they are under the Federal Standard Recognition System, meaning that Canadian Pacific could look to the Federal Standard colors and apply the correct color shades to their locomotives. So they just looked up the Federal Standard colors for dark ghost gray and light ghost gray and applied it just like you would see on any of these modern fighters. Really cool, really well thought out. And I want to say, too, I want to thank Canadian Pacific, and I also want to do a shout out to Adam Meeks, who helped us out extensively with the coloration, the artwork, the positioning, all of that. We couldn't have done that without him and the participation of Canadian Pacific. And also we want to thank Canadian Pacific for honoring our veterans and our troops. It really does mean a lot. Without our veterans, we wouldn't have some of the freedoms that would allowed us to take part of a wonderful hobby like this. So we also did another one. This is Lord Strathcona's horse. It's the Royal Canadians. It is a regular force armed unit. It's based out of Edmonton, Alberta, and the Strathconas served in the Afghanistan conflict between 2006 and 2010. So it looks like a standard Canadian Pacific unit, but if you look carefully, they've put the coat of arms on the cab. It's a really nice touch, and it's a nice way of honoring that armored unit. This is painted in the new CP system red with the new monochrome beaver logo, as you can see there. This has traditional nose configuration. It also has a center-mounted nose door lock. This one, unlike the military units that we showed you earlier, This one does have the blue flag bracket and the logo for the unit, the Strathcona's horse logo. You can see that on the side of the cab. Really cool locomotive. Now let's go to the OG SD70 ACUs, and that's Norfolk Southern. Now remember, these were former Union Pacific SD90 43s that Norfolk Southern bought, and along with Progressive Rail, they got the ball rolling and brought these locomotives up into the 21st century. Now these are really cool models. The Norfolk Southerns continue to sell well, so we've offered them a couple of times throughout the last 3 runs. These are 2020 era, and you can see what we're talking about here. We give you a brief summary about the rebuild program. These are based on 2020 era locomotives. So they're going to have the Nathan 5-chime horn, which sounds amazing, by the way, large plow, and alternating flashing ditch lights on both ends. That is available with the DCC setup when you purchase the Tsunami 2. Now, I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that these came with flashing ditch lights, because I usually get that comment or question in the video. Yes, since it is Norfolk Southern, it's going to have alternating flashing ditch lights. Will the CP versions have that? No. Typically on Genesis locomotives, they're set up from the factory to be exactly like the prototype. Some locomotives you can change that if you wish, but just want to let you know that those guys do have alternating flashing ditch lights. So there is 7295. Joining it is 7309. Same details as the previous unit. And 7327. So all of these, again, these were announced back in November of 23. You had about 30 days back then to place your pre-orders. And once the pre-orders closed, that was the end. Hopefully you got yours locked in. If you did, you're probably enjoying them right now. So let's talk a little bit about some of the updates. And these aren't all of the updates that these models have. These models have been given animated roller bearing caps in the trucks, like I said earlier. But you're also going to have illuminated truck lights. Now keep in mind the illuminated truck lights, those come on when power is applied. So as soon as the layout's turned on, the lights are on. We're going to look at the in-studio example here in a minute. You're not going to see those lights. Just because my studio is lit up that much, it's not going to be evident to be seen, but they are there and they do turn on as soon as power is applied. You're also going to have illuminated number boards. On this particular model, that is function number 6. See-through air intakes, again, the animated roller bearing trucks. That was something that we didn't have the first time we announced these back in 2020. These do have a full cab interior, a beautiful cab interior. So if you want to add a crew in there, you can. Also, you have the walkway tread, and really important, and actually we'll test this in real time if you like. Minimum radius on this big locomotive is 18 inches. However, our Athearn product developers do recommend a minimum radius of 22 inches. We'll try it on this layout tonight. The layout here is 18 inches. It should navigate it just fine. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look. If there's any questions out there, I can take care of those real quick. Remember, these are available with or without Tsunami 2 sound. You can get these DCC ready, so if you have your favorite decoder, you can put those in really easily. Let's see whatever questions we have here. Stephen, I see you're talking about some of the paint schemes. Keep in mind that military paint schemes, they're not standard just always because of the region. Sometimes, I mean, I see desert Humvees in Concord, New Hampshire. And I'll see the NATO green Humvees here in the Midwest. basically where they're needed. For the most part, when there is a conflict or some type of military maneuver that requires those colors, that's when they're going to use those colors. They're not just going to, when that conflict's over, they're not just going to repaint them just for their area. So that's why you're probably seeing some of the vehicles that you see, depending on what area. And again, CP, when they painted these locomotives, they actually went to military records. Like I was talking about earlier, you heard me talk about federal standard colors. Federal standard colors came about after World War II, after the ANA numbers of World War II were retired. That's a standard catalog. Each number in that 5-digit paint code dictates the shade, the glossiness, all of that. And that's a paint code is what that is. And that way, if a military base in, let's say, the Midwest is painting a piece of equipment and the government says it needs to be painted this color, they have the same exact match as a vehicle that might be in Washington State. It's a standardized painting system that the U.S. and most countries acknowledge. Federal standard is a pretty standard worldwide thing. Let's see what else. Yep, that's pretty much what we were talking about. So I knew this was going to come up, and I'm not going to ignore the elephant in the room. I've seen a lot of comments on social media. Honestly, I did not realize this was going to be this big of a deal. The SD70 ACUs are based on, we know that. There was another question on the packaging. What happened to the special packaging of the 5-unit set? Well, I will answer that. You may or may not like my answer, but I will answer it. So originally we thought about actually doing some special packaging, and we thought of many different things. At the time, there was a few ideas we had, and quite frankly, they were just too expensive. They would have added a lot of expense to the finished product. As we went forward, we started seeing the delays happening. We had some bigger issues that we were trying to tackle. And then, of course, in the last year, we saw prices go up because of tariffs, things of that nature. And everything has a cost. To you, a simple package of, I don't know, maybe a glossy package with different colors on it and different patterns and things of that nature, you don't see the cost associated with that. But in manufacturing, every color on a cardboard box, every label, every printing, that's a cost. So we started doing some math, and we realized that we could do a special box, but keep in mind that the prices on these 5-unit sets had already gone up because of the tariffs. Keep in mind those tariffs are paid for when the product actually comes into the country. So adding the tariff plus some more box art, we were kind of afraid that most people would just say, you know what, I'm not going to pay an extra $40, $50, $60 for a special box for 5 locomotives. And at the end of the day, we figured that most people were interested in the locomotives, not the box. Apparently, that's not true with everyone. If we missed the mark on that one, I apologize. Hopefully the locomotives, though, are more enjoyable than the box. But maybe you were one of those kids at Christmas that played with the Atari box more than the Atari. I don't know. We just have to make decisions that are going to work for everybody. And that was a decision that we came to, trying to make it more economical for everybody involved. And that is what we were working with. I'm not going to say we're perfect, but that was a decision we made. Hopefully that explains it to you again. I know you're either going to like that or not like that, but that's the answer. Here's another one we get all the time. When are the next announcements going to be announced? Before the end of the year. They're going to be coming. We're working on them. A lot of folks are concerned with that. We're not going away. There's nothing wrong. We realized that after saying that we were doing 60-day announcements, it would be kind of ridiculous for us to put new announcements for only 28 days or so and try to get everybody on board, especially combined with the American holiday of Thanksgiving being celebrated in November, plus other holidays in December. A lot going on. So we made the decision to push and start 2026 fresh. So we're going to be coming up with new announcements the day after Christmas, or what I like to call Boxing Day. Let's see. Are those number 8 turnouts behind you on your layout? No, they're not actually. They're code 70 microengineering, and they're just number 6s. I think that maybe the way the camera is showing it, they look a little bit more elongated. Sid wants to know any updates on the NSC 6400. Yes, there is. I'm extremely happy because talking with product development, a lot's been getting done in the last few days. We're going to start seeing some more stuff here on the California cars, the Surfliner cars. We're getting really, really, really close to production. There was a few design hurdles. There were some internal electronic hurdles that we were working on, but it looks like we've just got a few more things. And John has been able to get some other challenges taken care of. He's really happy to soon have that off his plate, which means he's working on other things, including the NSC 6400s. I don't have an update for you as far as a date yet, but you know, they are going to get worked on. Bruce, I'm going to put it up there since you typed it. Sorry, Jim, a bit disappointed. I know I will greatly enjoy the units, but it would be a better collector item if you had a special box. And the fact you are buying 5 units, you could spend a bit more. That may be true. So next time, maybe we will do a special box, and we'll see if you're right or if I'm wrong. We'll go from there. I mean, we can't hit everything right every time. We can see that every time a new model comes out. There's 5 people that are overjoyed and 15 that are disappointed that we didn't select our model. Speaking of which, if you think you can do a better job, we have an opening. We have an opening for a product developer because Athearn really needs some help with some product development. If you've got CAD background and you've got really good experience with North American locomotives, both diesel and steam, passenger and freight, we're still looking for someone. So send us your resume. You can get in touch with us. In fact, I've got some things here I can show you. As you can see, we are still hiring. You can go to horizonhobby.com, go all the way down to the end of the page, the very bottom of the page. Under About Us, look up Careers, select the Careers tab, and you'll see this product manager part for model trains, the Athearn division. And go ahead and select that, and it will have you register. You can update all your credentials there, and we'll look it over. Now, I had somebody ask a couple of weeks ago in the comments, say, I've sent my credentials in. I haven't heard anything. Check your spam filter because our human resources department has told me that they do respond to every application. So if you're not hearing anything from us, check your spam filter. But HR did want me to pass that along, that they are responding to everybody that takes the time. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. Just going back, see if there's anything that any other questions that I may have missed. Steven says, I'm still waiting for the Boston main hopper with extensions for wood chip service that I ordered from a major online dealer. Thought I'd ordered a Genesis DNH air slide from another, but was mistaken. Well, those shipped. In fact, we did Train Tuesday back in October from New Hampshire on those. Those have shipped. So if your dealer doesn't have them, maybe reach out to some other dealers that may have those in stock. Terry, thanks for thinking of options. That's one good thing about us modelers is we are pretty good at thinking about options. He says maybe offer the special box as an extra cost option. Could always release it later. Just an idea. Great idea, and it's a possibility. I remember one of the reasons it swayed me not to do it was when we did the DDA 40X bicentennial that never was part of our legendary livery series. We did the caboose with it and everything else. We did a really cool box art, and for the most part, and I will say for the most part, most people love the box art, and I didn't hear any complaints, but I did hear a few complaints of like, well, I wish you'd just done a regular Genesis box and it wouldn't have been so expensive. So it's one of those things where as a manufacturer we can try to please as many people as possible, but we're not going to always hit it 100% of the time. We have to make some judgment calls sometimes, and we try to do what's best for as many people as possible, but sometimes we don't always hit that. Let's see. Tim, I'm going to address you since you were kind enough to put that up there. With a high MSRP cost of 5-unit set, it should have been a special box. Plus, Athearn said there would be a special box during the period, so it feels like a bait and switch to me. We did talk about it, and like I said earlier, we thought about doing it. But keep in mind, in your own comment right there, you said with the high MSRP. With the high MSRP, it would have been even further higher if we had done a special box. So that was our reasoning. Will we do that next time? I don't know. Maybe next time you'll complain that we did the expensive box. I don't know. Again, we have to take into consideration what's going to work for the most people, and that was a judgment call we did, and it's going to please some folks, and it's going to be not so happy for some folks. Let's see what else we've got here. I think we've tackled the box thing enough. We can't appease everyone. Canadian, it says, in case you missed, I'm curious about the number of local motors you produce for a road name. How do you come to a decision about if it's 2 or 3? I'm wondering why. There's many reasons for that. First of all, it depends if it's Genesis, Athearn, or Roundhouse. Roundhouse, we usually just do 1 or 2 because Roundhouse is a different model entirely. Athearn is, I've said it before, it's our mid-level, our mid-tier. And so a lot of folks that buy Athearn, they buy multiple locomotives because, first of all, whether it's DCC ready or equipped with the Economy decoder, it's pretty economically feasible to order 2 or 3. And so we typically do 3 road numbers for Athearn. Not all the time, but we typically do. And then there's Genesis. Now, Genesis, it really depends on what we're modeling, what era, and things of that nature. If we're doing fresh from the factory as the railroad ordered them, let's say F45s, it's very common for us to do 3 units at a time because they're essentially the same locomotive because they've just been delivered from the factory, and we're just changing the road numbers. Now, if we're doing something that's a later locomotive, let's say a GP38-2, and it's for BNSF, well, we may only do 2 or 3 because those are the examples we found that support the tooling that we currently have in our inventory. So we'll do 2 or 3 of those. And in some cases, we're actually limited to how many road numbers the actual railroad had. So in some cases with, say, short lines, they only have maybe 1 or 2 locomotives. One of my favorite locomotives that's going to be delivering before the end of the year, I hope, or just at the beginning of the year, is the New England Southern GP18. We only did 1 of those because New England Southern only had 1 GP18. Other railroads, like if we were to do Illinois Central GP38s, -2s, if they're new from the factory, we would probably do 2 or 3 different road numbers. So there's a lot of different variables as to why we select that. But that's pretty much the high level answer for that. Let's see. Any other questions? Good question. Does the DC version come with a 21 pin connector? Yes, it does. A 21 pin NEM connector. So adding the sound decoder of your choice is pretty easy. You do have to get a speaker. It does not come with a speaker in the Genesis units. Unless we advertise on the box that it has a speaker, it does not come with when those are available. Kevin Utes, as far as your question about things coming in, you can always sign up for our Athearn newsletter. We do our best to work with the factory on when stuff's coming in. In fact, we've got some photo samples coming soon, so hoping not in this newsletter, but the next newsletter, we're going to have some news about some stuff coming in, maybe even before the end of the year. Let's see what other questions we have. Any updates on Rock Island Jeeps, Prime for Grime, or the blue ones? I'm hoping that along with my New England Southern, those Jeep 7Rs that we announced, the Rock Island blue and whites, we're watching that one. There's a possibility they might get in here before the end of the year. I'm still saying January because we know how shipping can be. We saw delays with the SD70 ACUs, and then they just showed up. Let's see what else we've got, and then we'll look at the actual locomotive on the layout. All right. Let's go ahead and turn our attention to the model here. All right. Now the sound is on the locomotive is off, but we can go through some of the details. And it is pretty well lit in here, but I think I've got enough shade on the cab that we can see some of the lit features. Again, I've got it on function 8, which is basically muting out the sound. I can go ahead and turn that off. Should be able to hear that. So this one is equipped with a Tsunami 2 decoder. And let's go with our lighting features. Of course, we've got headlights. In this case, nose mounted. And let's look at the cab. We've got lit cab numbers here. That is function number 6. Let's see if that shows up. You can just barely see it. Maybe if I zoom in on that, you can see. Let's do that again, so in case you missed it. There's the number boards are off. I'm going to shut off one of these. There, now it's a little darker. Let's see if we can see that. Function 6. There we go. So you've got your illuminated cab numbers. And of course, you've got ditch lights. It's a great looking locomotive, great detail. We've got our PTC antenna array there. I've zoomed in. Now again, remember these do have ground lights, but you're not going to see them here because the lighting in here, I've got floodlights all over the studio and it's just drowning out anything as far as shadows. Now somebody's got a question here I do want to address. Anthony's asking, I can barely see the headlights. Can the headlight setting or the light settings be changed? Get a brighter light. Yes, they can. So if you have the Tsunami 2 version, of course, you've got a CV that can be adjusted anywhere between 0 to 255. Now, one of the reasons why it seems so not so bright to you is maybe because earlier I wasn't zoomed in on it. It's also the angle. These are LED lights behind those clear lenses. So they're not piped in there. They're actual LED lights. And if it was coming head on, you'd see it a lot brighter. Of course, number 7 will dim the headlight. But yes, to answer your question, all of those All of those can be adjusted. That's the beauty of DCC. You can adjust all of that. You know, something else that I want to, well, I'm thinking about it when we're talking about lighting. If you're doing a modern locomotive like this, of course you want bright um, ditch lights, you want bright headlights. But let's go back a little bit. If you go back to the, 80s, even in the 70s, the lights aren't going to be the same. You know, the lighting technology has changed a lot in railroading over the years. And so a lot of the locomotives that I have that are for 1970s era, I turn the intensity down. I don't have it as bright as I would a modern locomotive because I'm trying to simulate an older halogen light, not an LED light like you'd see in a modern uh, locomotive. So something to think about. Steam guys, and that's another option for you in DCC. You can simulate that older glow. They certainly in the steam locomotives were not as bright as they are in modern locomotives. All right. So again, there is that really cool paint scheme again. This is patterned after the Spitfire, the Supermarine Spitfire. And you've basically got a dark green. It's a British dark green over a ocean gray, which was common with Spitfires at that era. And it's just a really nice, well done. Let's go ahead and adjust our camera here just a little bit. And we'll bring this down a little bit so you can some of that detail a little bit. We'll do a slow roll for you. Not a slow roll like a Spitfire. Slow roll like a SD70 ACU. I'm still going to have the sound off for this, but let's go speed step 1. So really nicely done locomotive. Canadian Pacific, in my opinion, just hit the ball out of the park with these. You can see how well the paint separation is, the paint color separation for the invasion stripes, and the camouflage. Yes, they do. Rotating bearing caps. Again, you can't really see it. But these do have rotating bearing caps. Correct. The first production of these that we announced back in 2020, they did not have that. So there it is. Now let's see. Let's go ahead and see if we can get some sound here as well. So this particular model, this has the Tsunami 2 decoder in it, sound decoder. Has all the appropriate sound files for the SD70 ACU based on the prototype. Again, a big thank you to Canadian Pacific and Adam Meeks for helping us out with all the research on these locomotives, as well as all the markings and everything else. Just an amazing effort by Canadian Pacific on these locomotives. If you've got these, you already know just how beautiful they are. And like I said, if you like to use a different decoder brand, and there are some great aftermarket speakers out there. you can put those in and put the decoder, sound decoder of your choice, and enjoy these to your liking. So these are just great locomotives. And I'm not really much into modern locomotives, but I'm really digging these. Terry's got a question. He's saying, any chance that Athearn would ever make these in legendary liveries in Southern, ACL purple, Seaboard Airline mint green, or on deck? We've talked about undecks on Train Tuesday before, and honestly, undecks, for the amount of money that we've got to put into them versus how they sell, it doesn't work well for us. We still have undecorated locomotives in our distribution center that we've had for over a year. So unfortunately, there's a few of us out there that still like to use an airbrush and like to decal and such. But unfortunately, that is not as big as it once was, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So probably not on that. Now, will we ever see these in legendary liveries? Well, honestly, the SD70 ACU, it is a pretty limited model. I mean, you've got 2 railroads that have them. You are starting to see them now in different railroads, because Norfolk Southern, if I remember correctly, Norfolk Southern fans, let me know in the comments. I believe most of them have been sidelined on Norfolk Southern. Canadian Pacific still uses them on most of their routes, not all, but most. So it's possible. Now, whether we'll do those roads or not, that just depends on what we see in surveys and how many people ask for that on our product suggestion email. Let's see. Any other questions? It's like DG Model Work says, this one completes my 5-unit set. I have a feeling we might see that in a review soon. Nice unit, Jim. I have the CP710 or 7010. Awesome model. Thank you. I agree. What Randall says, what I like about Soundtrack's decoders is the speed tables they use. They are outstanding. Yeah, they're pretty good right from the factory. Again, I'm going to go ahead and put this. I got it in. Let's put it forward. This is speed step 1. Sound is off, of course, but we can have that going back and forth while we're talking. And by the way, I just opened this. This is our photo sample. I haven't run it on the layout. It's the first time it's ever been on the layout. This is new, factory fresh. That's speed step 1. All right. Again, really, really nice job that CP did on painting these locomotives. Greg, thanks. We got a Norfolk Southern fan here. It says Norfolk Southern uses the SD70 ACU units as manned pusher service over Horseshoe Curve. Good to know. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that knowledge with us. I'm going to go back to see if there's any other questions. Go Army, sleep in the mud. I had a buddy that served in the Army, and he did serve in the mud too. He slept a lot in the mud. He really liked this. However, I'm trying to focus on finishing out my BNSF fleet next year. I get it. There's so much stuff coming out right now. I understand. We all have budgets. Thank you. Yes, it's just a beautiful model all the way around. And really, I mean, video still doesn't give it justice as seeing it in real life. That's why I was so disappointed I didn't have these in time for Train Fest. So again, right out of the package, right out of the box, this is speed step 1. So there you have it. While we're talking, I'm going to attempt to move this camera here because we all want to see it go around and negotiate the 18-inch curve. We're going to do this in real time. You're experiencing it the same time I do. Zoom out a little bit. And when it gets close, we'll go ahead and we'll show it. Any other questions, feel free to ask while we wait for our locomotive to make its round. Anthony says the SD70M, SD75M, and SD75Is are my picks. The SD70ACU looks more like an SD80 or 90 Mac. Well, keep in mind, Anthony, that is because that's what they're derived from. They originally came from the SD90, and in case of Norfolk Southern, SD90 43 Max. So it's kind of like I was saying earlier, it's a locomotive that they replaced the electronics and they upgraded the cab with a SD70 ACE style cab. So yeah, that's why it looks like an SD80 or SD90. That's where its origins come from. We're just entering the curve in speed step 1, and let's go ahead. I think we're not in view yet. Ian Green, 1970. The very first product suggestion email I sent a few years ago was for the CA11 cabooses. Any word on when to expect them to arrive? And now that we've got a lot of the work done on the the California cars, we might have some updates at Amherst or the earlier part of next year. No dates yet, though. All right, there it is, going around, just going into the 18-inch radius. If that was a full-scale locomotive, you'd be hearing a lot of squealing going on right now. As you can see, speed step 1, it's negotiating the 18-inch radius rather nicely. Not complaining at all. Might be able to pick up some cars that I need to pick up. Thank you, Terry. Thank Athearn team, and also again want to thank Adam Meeks with Canadian Pacific for helping us make this really nice model. Yeah, it kind of reminds me, Stephen, of 027. It's tight. It's a good thing I don't have anything like that on my layout right there. Club president saying happy Tuesday, John. It's quiet, nothing like the older Athearn locomotives. Yeah, let me turn the sound on so you can hear. I've got both my lapel mic and the camera mic going on. I don't hear anything. It's pretty quiet. All right, if you got any other questions, now's the time. We're going to finish up this episode here. Any update on the arrival of the GP18 units? Yeah, those are the ones that I'm waiting for as well. There's a possibility we might get them before the end of the year, but I'm still going to say January just to play it safe. Shipping can be delayed. We had some delays recently, and that's why everything just happened all at once. Let's see what else we've got. Randall still loves those old coffee grinder Athearn units. Yeah, as loud as they are, they still run. I still have a few of them. I have some that I inherited from my dad that still operate. All right. Well, we'll do one, maybe two more questions. We're going a little bit long tonight, but I did have a special presentation with these SD70 ACUs. Again, these are at your Athearn dealer now. If you pre-ordered, probably one of the ones that are enjoying them now. We're hoping for the same time as the GP18s. They should be in the same shipment. So I'm going to say early January, we should start seeing those shipped to dealers. Let's see. Hey, Jim, did CN Railroad own any of the SD70 ACUs? No. They may have operated on their territory, but they didn't own any. That was pretty much just Norfolk Southern and CP that owned those. All right. Well, with that, I am going to let you guys get back to it and get some modeling done. I really appreciate you guys joining me tonight on Train Tuesday. If you joined us live, thanks again for joining us. And if you watch us on our YouTube channel, thank you for that. I appreciate that. All of us at Athearn appreciate our customers and spending their time with us at the layout. So until next time, everyone, I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling, and above all, high greens. Take care, everyone.